And we're back with another episode, Danay Garcia podcast. This time I have with me Tony Rodrigues. Thank you so much for coming to collect and grow seeds with me. Tony, seriously, when I brought you in, I'm like, how can I introduce Tony? Like, you are a mentor, you are an entrepreneur, you are like a life coach. I mean, how would you define yourself? Just to start with that so people can be like, okay, you're someone that get up and grow. When I think of you, it's like, I think of all those things. But I mean, how would you describe yourself kind of now? Like, what do you do the most right now during these weird times? I think that's the best way.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had an interesting story, as so many people have. Just having started as an immigrant kid in this country as well, and having to go through all of that. And growing up was a little bit was rough, to say the least. And I've just had a lot of crazy experiences in my life that have not forced me, but have put me on the path that I'm meant to be on. We can get to that a little bit more. But right now, if somebody asks, who am I? I would say that I'm an entrepreneur. I am a life and business strategist, and I am somebody that just wants to help ease suffering in the world. Right?
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I'm a trainer with Tony Rodrigues as well, which has certainly facilitated and really sped up that process. And I'm many things. I'm one person, but I'm many things to many people. And I just like to be a light and shine some light in the world. I'm here to learn. I'm here to share. I'm here to teach. And
Sweet.
I'm just here to make an impact, because I think we can all make an impact in the world. And I'm just here to do my little part.
I love that. And we talked about the podcast and how can we kind of put an angle in your country vision. You are so wide into everything you just said. So I was like, okay, let me just let him show me which angle, because I can't just pick one. I just can't. So
listen,
I love that. I love that you are a student and you're a mentor. I love that. You're a student and you're a mentor, and you are so many things, but always being a student, it just keeps you growing. And that's kind of like for everybody, hashtag get up and grow. That's like this guy right here. Tony, to start our episode today, I wanted to talk to you about something that I felt when I heard you the first time. I just really felt like we need to hear this. And it's just kind of like unlock the story to get rid of that story that they told us and focus on who we are today. Because especially now during this pandemic and this crisis that we're living, we are battling with the stories they told us before, like generations. We are like a result of generations before. So how can we just kind of really see the present for what it is, which is already challenging, right? And also show our kids, whatever I told you, kid, try to find your own version of that and make your own story too. Like, how can you break that down for people, really?
Well, I think that we're a compilation of our life's experiences, right? And our life's experiences are not just our experiences that we've had, but it's the experiences that our parents have had, our grandparents have had, and their parents, and we're going back, because we learn, right? When we grow up, as we're growing up, we're learning. And many times we're learning things that aren't right because they were thought to be right by someone else.
Right.
So many times we're taught the wrong thing by people that thought they were teaching us the right thing. We're treated and our life is a certain way because they thought, this is how I grew up, this is how you have to grow up. Well, except we're in different times. So it's different ways, different approaches. And I say that growing up is learning, then it's unlearning what we learned so we can learn it again. Because many times we were taught things by people that didn't know shit about what they were teaching us either.
Exactly.
Right. And then we wonder, and when we look back that way and we understand, because it really comes with understanding, and this kind of is maybe going a little deeper than you had wanted to go in terms of what my thought process is right now. We don't have to go down this road. So many of us that have had it hard growing up. I know I certainly did. My father was a very violent man. That's how he grew up. So he didn't know better. Somebody can't give you something that they don't have.
Right.
And if he didn't have a love for himself, it's difficult for him to give love to someone else. Like I said, this is going kind of maybe
I
deeper
love
than you
this.
thought it would go.
Well,
But
this is exactly what we are all going through to some extent. It's just this confusion of what is being taught to us that it doesn't really work, and then you start questioning: did that person love me? Why would somebody put the wrong path for me? Like if it's especially a parent, like you
well, here's the
question that.
thing. Yeah, many times they didn't know it was the wrong path. They thought it was the right path because that's the path that they grew up on. That's what they knew. So if that's what they know, that's what they're going to teach. They can't teach you something they don't know. They can't give you something they don't have. They don't have emotional intelligence. They say, well, the problem with today's kids is that, they don't have emotional intelligence. Well, you know why? Because their parents didn't have emotional intelligence because they probably didn't learn it. They just didn't learn it. Right. So how can they pass that on if they didn't know it? How can they give you something that they don't have?
Wow.
Right. Think about it. Dad, I want to get a brand new Mercedes. Well, if he never owned a car, he can't even get you a Hyundai, never mind a Mercedes. He doesn't have it. Right.
Yes.
And, it took me years to really come to terms with the fact that I think I heard "and I love you" from my father. I was probably in passing in my late 30s.
Wow.
And it's still not something that he says comfortably. Now he'll still say it, but you can tell he's uncomfortable saying it. Right. He's still uncomfortable saying it. So you can give someone something you don't have. And when you can look back and understand that, and one of the things I say is that you can only love someone as deeply as you've loved yourself.
Oh.
And you can only accept love from someone else as deeply as you love yourself. I'm a lot of the talks that I wind up doing have a lot to do with conversations I've had with my mom. And last year, about this time, it was about this time, just coming to April, it was just before my son's birthday. She called me. They moved back to Portugal. That's where I'm from originally. And, they're on lockdown. The whole Europe has been on lockdown, right? I actually did go to see them. There was a sickness, so I had to go and there's a medical issue that I had to go in November and visit them quickly, and everything's okay. But they come every spring. And because my son's birthday is in April, my birthday's in April, Easter and all of that. She was very upset that she couldn't come. And she's like, but I want to be there. And she's crying and she's going through all this. I said, Mom, the best thing you can do for us and for your grandkids is to love yourself. Love yourself more. Forgive and let go and love yourself because, and I told her, I says, because you can't accept the love that we're trying to give you, the level that you need and that you really want, because you're not loving yourself. So the best thing you can do for yourself is for your family is to love yourself.
Wow.
Because the more you love yourself, the more you can feel the love from others, and the more love you can give, because you can only love as deeply as you love yourself. And it's funny because you can only receive in that same way. So I say that why? Because my father, for an example, didn't have that, and he just didn't have that to give. So when you look back, you're like, okay, I get it. You were an ass, but you didn't have it to give.
Wow.
Right. So I don't even know how we went down this road.
That's so beautiful.
We were talking about.
No, we were talking about this the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that they tell us,
yes.
and how wrong it is, and it's interesting, and how we learn. And when do you realize that the stories that you've been getting were not healthy for you? How can people ask that question? Because it's hard to question our parents, right? It's hard to be like, you're wrong, I'm right. Like, it's hard to even comprehend the whole right and wrong thing, especially when the parent is so not aware. And when did it happen that you were like, the stories I grew up with were they're not healthy. I cannot pass this on to my children. I can't attract this into my life. How did that happen? Like, when do you figure that out?
I died first.
Wow.
I had, growing up, like I said, I had a really hard time growing up. I was a shy kid. You wouldn't know me. Nobody would know me.
Are you serious?
I was a really shy kid. Oh, so shy. I had a handful of friends because, listen, I was physically and mentally and emotionally abused growing up. Right. So I was a shy kid because, couldn't step out of line because,
something
it
was
would
going to
not
be
be
wrong.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I found myself with a razor blade to my wrist when I was 16 years old. And, you know, I just said, man, who's going to tell my mom? I can't do that to her.
Oh,
And I decided shortly thereafter, or, you know, right about that time, I said, I'm not going to give anything or anyone the satisfaction of my demise.
oh,
Right. I'm not going to give up because that's the ultimate freaking failure. Failure. You don't fail until you quit. And I'm not going to quit and give something or somebody that's really trying to mess up my life. I'm not going to give that person or that thing or that situation the satisfaction of my demise because then they win.
yes.
Man, I'm a bad quitter. I think I was telling you that before. I'm a bad quitter. I don't like quitting. And I'm like, you know, screw you. No, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of my demise. And that's when I kind of developed that, and I developed that emotional intelligence just out of sheer necessity, and
Mm.
just not wanting to give up and not wanting to quit. And God has a sense of humor. So on my 18th birthday, I had a massive car accident, and I was ejected from the windshield. And the only thing that it was a 4-letter word that saved my life is I yelled it as my cousin who was driving. I turned, cursed, and I was ejected from the windshield. My legs
Oh,
kept me in the car. Well, I went out and my legs kept me in, so I came back in. So I had severe facial trauma, head trauma,
wow.
and I woke up in the hospital, quote unquote, woke up in the hospital, looked down at my body, and most peaceful moment of my life. I can't even explain it. And I just said, "Damn, who's going to tell my mom I'm dead?"
Wow.
Yeah, and I was just sitting there looking at the doctors working on me, and you know,
Wow.
I thought I was dead, and but you know, it was really peaceful, really bizarre. Actually, I don't even know how to explain it. And then I did have the black tunnel, white light thing that you hear. You know, the
That's
images
insane.
flashing.
Wow.
You know, my name's being called and images are flashing. There really isn't much to see because I didn't have, you know, what many would call a happy childhood. And somebody says, "Man, I'd love to go back and be a kid again." I'm like, "Nope, not me. I'm good. Once was enough. Unless I can go
Wow.
back and know what I know now, I don't want to go back. I really wouldn't." So I saw a lot of these images, and of course, I exploded into a world of pain
Mm.
and whatever it was. And it was shortly after that that I decided that I would have died without having lived. I would have
Yes.
died without having experienced life. I'd never had a girlfriend. I had very
18
few
years
friends.
old.
My 18th birthday, I would have died without having lived. So I decided if I was going to die tomorrow, I would live today. So I
Oh.
started doing crazy shit. I almost drowned as a kid. You know, I was still in high school, so I finished high school, and then when I could, I got a job. And I never went to college. I like to say that I do have a PhD, though, a public high school diploma.
I would
Um,
take that.
that's Go ahead and take it. I borrowed it from someone else myself, and of course, the master's from the School of Hard Knocks, right? So I didn't go to college because I was always told growing up that I would never amount to shit, and I was
Wow.
no good, and I was dumb, and I was stupid, and I would never do anything with my life. And so you asked me. This started from the story of when did you know that that story was bullshit? It was then.
Wow.
It was then at that moment that I said, you're full of bullshit. He bet me. I got into real estate at 18
Which is so
against him.
very strange, real estate at 18 back then.
Well,
That's
the
like
reason
really
being,
amazing.
yeah, I was probably one of the youngest kids. As a matter of fact, when I was in real estate school, I looked around. Everybody was old, but they were like 35, 45, 50 years old.
So
And
ahead
to
of
me,
your
that was old at
years.
18 year old. And I'm like, damn. And I'm still the kid. I just came out of high school. So I'm like goofing around. Everybody's like, right, damn kid, whatever. I'm like, you're going to die before me. Shut up. I mean, that's, this is just, this is just my, kid, you're a kid. There's things that go through your head.
Of course.
Um, and I got into real estate, but my father didn't want me to. He said, no, you're going to come to work with me. And I'm like, I'm not going to go to work with you. I had just had an accident, broke my body, and he was a labor. He didn't have his own company. He didn't work for himself. He worked construction. He was a laborer for someone
Oh
else.
my God.
Nothing against that. But I'm like, I'm hurting still,
No.
and I'm not going to do that. And it was too late to sign up for college when I woke up, so to speak. Um, and I didn't want to set myself up for failure, so I decided to get into real estate. He bet me $1,000 that I would fail. At 18 in 1990, that was a lot of
Wow.
money, at least for an 18-year-old.
That's a lot of
And by
money.
the way, I've been working since I was 11.
Oh wow.
Yeah. even here in the US. Yes, been working since I was 11. And I got into real estate, and I did my first closing 2 days before the 3 months was over, and I dumped all the money on it. Went to the bank, got all small bills, and dumped the money in front of him. Says, "Now give me my $1,000." So my first commission on a property that I sold at 148 South Street in Newark, New Jersey.
You will never forget
my
that.
first commission was $737, and it was $1,737 because I took his money. And that was at that point that I said, you know what, screw you. Tell me I can't, and I'm going to prove you freaking wrong. And I started changing my life. Basically, I'm not going to say it was that day, but it was in that period of time between the accident, between all of this. And I get into real estate, and I had a full-time job because I moved out when I was about 20 years old. I didn't go to college. I had a full-time job, and I was doing real estate full-time. I do full-time jobs.
Wow.
And I was working 90 hours a week. I had to change who I was. During the day, I was in my 20s, and at night I was a kid, right? Because I had to change my personality. Who's going to buy a house at the time? Who's going to buy a house from an 18-year-old kid? Now, 18, 19, 20-year-olds are getting into real estate all the time. But back then, trust me, I was the only one anywhere near that age.
You were so ahead of your years. That's like you were living in the future that we're living today. Like it's that's pretty amazing. You are like the perfect example of somebody that decided to write its own story, Tony. And I'm not surprised that you have this as one of your key points. How can we change the story they told us? It's like you are the perfect example of somebody that decided to write its own books with its name on it.
Well, I am.
And that's beautiful.
That. I am very far from perfect or from the perfect story. I will say though, when that started to change for me, because I bought my first house at 22 or 23. I was 1995. So 23. I bought my first house at 23, and I opened up my real estate office. I was either 24 or 25 when I opened up my own office.
Wow.
And all throughout, I started doing well. And, I got into real estate full time when I was probably 21 or 22. And left my other job, and then I opened up my real estate office. And all the while, I was just suffering the pain because I still have some memory issues from the accident. I still have pain from some of the damage that was done at the time. And I would say, why did I have that accident? God, why did I have that accident? And I had a shitty childhood. I had this, I had that. And I just look back with this regret, and I look back, with anger even. And it wasn't until I met Tony Robbins. I went to my first event. And I learned then, I was about 27, 28 years old. And I learned then that life is happening for me and not to me. And when I realized that, and I kind of got into that, and what you focus on expands, and where focus goes, energy flows. And I look back, and that's when I realized, wow, I look back and I realized that, that accident didn't come to disrupt my life, didn't come to screw up my life. That accident came to save my life, because I don't know who I would be had I not had that accident. That accident didn't come to knock me off course. It came to put me exactly on the course that I needed to be.
Yeah.
It woke me up.
It woke you up.
I'm on my second life at least. And when I look back on my childhood was not one that I would want for my kids, at least not the majority of it. There were obviously some pieces that were great when I'd go back to Portugal, and that's when I had freedom and what have you. Yet, I didn't have the father that I wanted. I didn't have the father that I deserved, but I had the father that I needed to have to become the man that I am today.
For sure.
Right? To be who I believe I am, a better father than he was, and hopefully a better husband than he was. And I'm saying hopefully because I know that I am. I think we could always be better and do better. But I wouldn't be the man I am today had I not gone through the pain, and had I not gone through all that shit that happened. So when things are happening in our lives, they're happening in many cases. I would say that 99% of the times they're happening for us, not to us. Right? They're happening for us. Life is happening for us, preparing us for what it is that we want. And sometimes we go through a lot of pain. Like, really? I went through pain. Why? Well, so you can have a contract. So you can appreciate what it is that you have.
Right.
So you can build that muscle to carry maybe the weight of success when it finally comes.
Totally.
Because so many people succeed. So many people have everything and are unhappy. So many people succeed and don't have fulfillment. So many people don't understand because they don't have the contrast. They don't have that perspective of being somewhere else.
Wow.
Right. So absolutely. I think it's all just part of our story. And I started, that's when I started rewriting my story, was after the accident. I really started rewriting it after, my first event with Tony Robbins, saying, holy shit, there is so much more.
Took it to the next level.
And
it just makes you conscious of the person that you are becoming. It kind of put in perspective he's becoming of, who you are today, and why not to question the back, why to focus on the future. And, I hear a lot that grandparents here learn so much more from grandchildren, that they, you always hear, oh, I love my grandchildren more than I love my kids. Now, Tony, that you wrote your story, as a parent, as a man, as a, successful human, that I consider you being, just because you're inner, you're so fulfilled and happy and struggles, but everything is like a flowing machine. And that's like the ultimate success, I think. It's like, yeah, the machine is going to stop for a second, but as long as everything inside keeps flowing, it will continue. Do you think your dad or your mom, looking at your story, the one that you're writing today with your children and your family, and even in these weird times, do you think they've learned something from this book that you're writing? This, do you think that they are getting something from it?
I think that they are. Like I said, whenever I go back, it's funny. Whenever I go back, or they're here visiting or whatever, I always give them these conversations, and 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 sometimes they're intense. They're looking at me like, where the hell's all this coming from? I say, well, this is what, because
they really don't know where all this has come from.
No, because they don't, it's weird. I'm such a different person than I was a year ago, such a different person than I was 5 years ago, such a different person than I was 10 or 20 years ago. Never mind who I was 25 or 30 years ago. I would like to believe that all the good is still there, and I'm very different at the same time, because we evolve. It reminds me of, I brought this up the other day to somebody. It reminds me of that. We've all seen that drawing, that caricature of there's a caterpillar and a butterfly at a coffee table having tea, and the caterpillar turns to the butterfly, says, you've changed, and the butterfly says, we're supposed to.
Wow.
We're supposed to change. We're supposed to evolve. We're not supposed to stay a caterpillar our whole lives. We're supposed to go through that pain of transition, because a caterpillar literally has to die to hit who he was yesterday, has to die, goes into this pupa and literally disintegrates into mush in order to be reborn again as this butterfly. And then, there's a sadness in a way to the butterfly, because the butterflies are so beautiful. But did you know that a butterfly cannot see its own wings, so it doesn't know how beautiful it is?
Yeah.
Because it can't see its own wings. Its beauty can only be admired by others. But there's that transition point. We're supposed to change. We're not supposed to stay the same.
We're supposed to fly. They fly away.
You're supposed to sprout your wings and fly. You're not supposed to be just crawling on the earth or crawling around, right? We're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to get into that next version of ourselves and show people a different thing, show people a different perspective.
Totally.
And show people that doesn't matter if you were a caterpillar. It doesn't matter if you died and went through this difficult moment in your life of transformation, of growth. You too can sprout your wings, but you've got to, it's the caterpillar that doesn't just go into a cocoon. No. There isn't a cocoon hanging in a tree. He just goes in there and that happens. No, he's got to build a cocoon. And then he's got to go in there and he's got to take action. He's got to be an active participant in his own salvation, as the saying goes, in its own growth, in its own development. And some people just stay caterpillars their whole lives.
Wow.
Because they're too afraid to go through the pain. They're too afraid. They don't of the unknown of what it takes to become more than what they are. So a lot of people just stay and settle, and, we were having a conversation. I co-host, and the shameless plug, I co-host the show with success.com every morning. I'm going to tag you in on that. I think I don't know if I have or not. I'm going to bring you in on that room. Today we were talking about passion and finding your passion and working your passion. And so many times, people find their passion and tie their passion to a goal, which I don't know that I agree with that. A goal could be part of the passion, but you shouldn't tie your passion to your goal. For example, if you want to be an Olympic athlete, you go to the Olympics, you win, you go home, you get a ticket to a parade, maybe you're face down a Wheaties box. And now what?
Right.
the first astronauts that walked on the moon, after they came back, they were heroes. They were ticker tape parades. They went on shows and TV shows and this and that, and it was amazing. And all of a sudden, then they started fading away, and every single one of them went through bouts of depression,
Wow.
like unknown to anyone. Unless you read their books now, you still don't hear that they all went through a depression, because they've culminated. Their passion, they absolutely rose and they got to the moon.
Wow.
Now what? Right? So now you've got to find a different purpose. So many people think, okay, I'm going to find a purpose, my passion, and then that's it. Well, you've got to understand that your passions can change, and they must change, because as you get closer, if you tied it to a goal, you get there and then you lose your drive. Right? So you got to you got to make sure your passion, you could renew it to find something new and exciting to get there. Otherwise, what winds up happening to so many people, we've all heard this expression that many people die at 25 and are only buried at 75, because they live the same day, the same year, year after year after year, and they don't grow through what they go through.
Right.
Right. Back to the whole thing that I talk about all the time, that in life, we all fall down, and most people just get up and go, and we get up and go. I get up and go.
That too.
But that's not enough. You got to get up and grow.
Yes.
Right. You got to grow through what you go through. Otherwise, you keep going through it. You got to grow through what you go through. Otherwise, you keep living the same life, the same nightmare, the same headache, day after day after day, until you grow through it. And most people don't grow through it until they're older, until they just can't. They don't have any
until they realize
alternatives.
Oh, something
There's
is
no
missing.
More time.
Yeah.
I'll do it when I have time. I'll do it one day, until they realize they have no more time, and now it's too late.
When I project passion, what should I attach it to? A journey? Should I attach it to what exactly? Because I don't want people to think, oh, I want to attach it to happiness, because that's a really scary line again. Like, what's happiness? Like, just to be like in a steady, happy Wonderland, Disneyland kind of dynamic. So that passion has to be attached to what exactly?
I learned this from Brendan Burchard. I learned this from him, and he said, it's people say that, they just want to. The purpose of life is to be happy, and he says, I don't know that I agree with that. It's to be joyful.
Yes.
To find joy.
Yes.
Because happiness usually means it's conditioned on something happening, something being a certain way.
Exactly.
Right. And so many times, life isn't always a certain way. You've got to find joy in the small things.
Exactly.
Because happiness, while I say that sometimes too, the purpose of my life is to be happy. Because if I'm happy, that means nobody around me is suffering, because I'm that empath that I don't like to see people hurting. So I know that if I'm happy, if I'm joyful, then that means everybody around me is doing pretty well, right? They're comfortable, at least they're not suffering. So yet to find joy in small things, I think, is better than finding happiness, because happiness could be a finite thing.
Very
it could
smart.
be tied to,
yes.
If you're only happy when it's sunny outside, what happens when it rains and it's cold?
Exactly.
Right. So it's just finding joy in the little things, and one of the challenges that we have is that, again, I don't know if I mentioned it before, obviously I'm a trainer with Tony Rodrigues, and one of the things that he taught us a couple of years ago, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I know this wasn't something we were thinking about talking about today.
Oh,
but this
I
is
love.
How,
look, this is
how
I love it. This is how we do it. this is what it's supposed to be.
As well.
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And he talks a lot about living in a beautiful state, and it's not just living in Florida or Texas, but it's living in a beautiful state, right? Living in a beautiful place is a beautiful state of mind. When he came into a room with the trainers, and he said, listen, he asked a question, what's your happiness worth? People are putting up their hand, oh, it's priceless, it's worth everything. It's, he says, okay, so why do you give it away so cheap? I'm like, damn. Okay. But that still didn't ring that much. And then he kept talking. He says, most people don't have a bad day. They have a bad moment that they milk all day.
Oh.
And then he says, so why do you give it away so cheap? So I took a marker and I wrote on my arm, because this is before the event, right? And then, we go through the event for 6 days. It was Date with Destiny. And I wrote in the script of marker, I said, how cheap is my happiness? I'm like, That pisses me off. How cheap is my happiness? F you, my happiness isn't cheap.
It's not
cheap. It took
cheap.
me a long goddamn time.
Yes.
It took me a long goddamn
you had to
time
die.
to find my happiness. Yeah. And you know what? It ain't cheap. So then when he said, why do you give it away so cheap? I'm like, damn.
No.
Yeah. So I'll just go this way. Most people don't have bad days. So so then I came up with the story. So, you wake up in the morning, your alarm, you thought you hit snooze, you turn the alarm off. Then you wake up like half hour later, like, oh my God, I'm late. What a shit. God damn it. Why? And you're already angry. And you trip over the dog, damn dog. And you go, you make a cup of coffee, you get in the car, you're driving, you pass a red light, you see the cops behind you, you spill coffee on your shoe. You're like, God damn it, this thing just getting worse and worse. And, then the cop gives you a ticket. You said, damn it, I'm late for work. He's like, I don't care. Gives him a ticket. Guy gets to work late. The guy, his boss at work starts to break his chops. Like, you're late again. I says, you don't have no idea what happened to me this morning. He says this and that. Says, I don't give a shit about your day. You know what? Screw you. Screw me. Screw you. You're fired. You go home. You tell your wife. Your wife gets pissed off. See, I told you your attitude was going to get you in trouble. This, that gets into a fight. You see how things can spiral out of control only because he woke up 30 minutes late. So most people don't have a bad day. They have a bad moment that they milk all day. And a bad day becomes a bad week. A bad week becomes a bad month. A bad month becomes a bad year. A bad year becomes a bad life. And we all know people that are just angry. They're 70, 60, 70, 50 years old. They're just angry. It doesn't matter if it's sunny outside, if it's raining.
Totally.
They're just always upset. And here's the thing. You ask them why they're mad. They don't know.
No, they forgot already why they're mad. They've been mad for so long.
Because it might have been a flat tire 30 years ago or a parking ticket that they didn't get over. And they gave away their happiness 30 years ago, and it just got worse and worse and worse.
To a flat tire.
I'm not here to tell you, by the way, that I'm not here to tell you that I'm happy all the time. I get pissed off. I got no problem with that. I just don't stay pissed off.
Yes.
I don't stay angry. You ask anybody, if I yell at my kids or I have an argument with someone, I don't stay angry. Mm-hmm. There's no point in staying angry, right? Because I'm giving away, as it is, I get upset at myself when I give away my happiness to somebody for something cheap. Oh. So now I'm going to ask you, and I'm asking your audience, how cheap is your happiness?
My happiness is not cheap. I mean, the one thing I completely, resonate with you, Tony, is that we really understand what's like to not understand this. When you feel in a place that you don't know, you hear people happy and you don't understand that concept. And I always was so against this happy, go to seminars so you're going to be happy. And this the happiness concept, I was kind of like against it. It just feels like so much pressure to feel like, it's like, when you go to Six Flags, if you really like roller coaster, you're like, and this high, but then you want to go to sleep because it was too intense. It's like when you go to Disneyland, everything is like the happiest place on earth, but it's like, do you really want to live there? Do you really, really want to live in Disneyland? Because I don't. I mean, I could go there to experience a really good moment in my life, which could be a day, but I understand the difference. And I just focus on living happy moments, on, accepting happy memories. Like I love remembering, those happy moments that I lived before and honoring that. And especially nowadays that everything has shut down, you really have to rely on, the things that you've created, the things that you've done. And it really feeds into a hard moment, a hard day. Like, oh, this is not forever, right? Like I'm having this hard situation, but I know nothing is forever, not even our problems. Nothing, not even your happiness.
Oh, absolutely.
Not even your problems. Not even nothing is forever. Like it's so thinking that
forever.
happiness, that this thinking that happiness will be forever. It's like seeking that. It's like ridiculous. But the joy of living life, no matter what, understanding the happy moments, the difficult times, the arguments, but at the same time, just feel constant joy of your journey and understanding that you're in a process of growth. It's when I understood that, every time, obstacles would come at me, I would just look at it. This is going to go away. And I will learn my lesson. I would understand my opportunity here, because there's always, like you said, said everything I kind of resonate with. Your accident became an opportunity for you to grow, became an opportunity to be who you are today. So when things are coming at you, like it's just you feel like you're being attacked, right? You just right away have to trust that this attack is not going to be a forever attack, right? Because you freeze, right? And once you understand that, right, like once you understand that, I'm going to get out of my pissed off moment, you're going to go into this joyous place because this is what your intention is, and you're going to learn your lesson and your opportunity. And that's kind of how I don't judge anything around it. I just live it and I move on, because the one thing we know, no matter what happens, pandemic, is that the sun is going to come and go. Like that is the one thing that is not going to change, right?
You're singing my song. You're singing my song literally, because, one of the things that I say is that, if you're having, a bad day, or rather if everything's great and life is good, enjoy it, because it's not going to last.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're having a bad day, the good news is, if you're having a bad day and you're having a bad period in your life, the good news is that's not going to last.
It's not going to last.
Good times don't last, but neither do bad times.
Exactly.
I hear this from Tony Rodrigues all the time, is that the biggest problem that most people have is that they think that they shouldn't have any problems.
Oh my God.
That's the biggest problem people have.
Yes.
Right? Most people just say, but I just want my life to be smooth, just nice and smooth. Well, hold on, let's just do it with sound. That's
You're dead.
Right? Life is like a heartbeat. It's up and it's down. It's beautiful what you were saying. What you were literally singing my song. You were like, I'm like, we're so in tune right now. It's ridiculous, because the reality of it is that life is like a heartbeat. It's got highs and lows, peaks and valleys.
Oh my God.
Right?
And it's beautiful.
And you got to, it's beautiful. Listen, so when you were doing that with your hands, I'm like, oh my God, she's like in my head. So it's quite literally, when you're at the peaks, right? It's hard. That climb is hard. When you're at the peak, just appreciate the view, appreciate it, soak it all in, because you're going to need that, because the dip is coming.
It. Yes.
And when the dip is coming, just know that when you're going to go down, just know that you're going to bounce back up and you're going to go back up. And so you've got to appreciate listen, rock bottom will teach you things that mountaintops never will.
Absolutely.
Because when you win, when you succeed, you celebrate. When you lose, when you fail, when you make mistakes, you ponder, you learn. And that's what happens. So, and when you're in the valley, just understand that brighter days are coming. And the closer you get to the bottom, the darker it gets, the closer you are to your breakthrough. Because the harder it gets, boom, you hit rock bottom, it gets the darkest ever, then it starts to light up again. You start to rise again. And then you're going to come up, and now you're going to be able to appreciate that peak that much more, because you've been in the valley. Because if you've never been down to the valley, you can't really appreciate the peak. That's where contrast comes. That's where that's where you get that perspective, the different perspective of what life is really about. And so the goal in life is to keep those peaks high and those valleys not deep.
Not deep.
Just try to shorten the time that you're there, and the depth and sharpness of that. So maybe instead of having the extremely high peaks, maybe they become smooth mountains and they smooth valleys. So it's a little easier. They're not as sharp, because Tony, when they're really sharp, that means you're at the peak for too short a time. When you have that little plateau, it's nicer. You get to enjoy it a little bit more. And I think that that's what life's about. It's not about that heartbeat as much as it is getting that sound wave and that flow of energy. Because, that energy that goes up and down, it's erratic, it's high, it's low. As you get older, hopefully, you get in tune, right? You get energetically in tune with who you're supposed to be. And I think that energetically and coming into tune is back to the conversation before of when you were talking about passion. Do you make passion part of your destination or part of your journey? I'll say that, life is indeed about the journey and not the destination, but there are destinations along the journey that you must get to in order to have a smoother ride, so that your journey is much better. And the longest journey most people will ever take, most humans will ever take, is only about 18 inches. And that's the distance between their brain and their heart.
Wow. True.
Because when we can most people just live in their head. Well, again, I'm going to quote Tony Rodrigues again: when you're in your head, you're dead. When you're in your heart, you're smart. And when you're in your head and you just think with your head, you don't think emotionally, you don't feel, you're thinking your way through life instead of feeling your way through life. And the sooner you can make that transition and connect your brain and your heart, the easier life is going to be, and the more pleasant and more joy you're going to be able to find, the more harmonious, the more your life is going to go from looking like a heartbeat to looking like a smooth sound wave, and become awesome. that symphony. Make your life that symphony, that beautiful music to hear. Because everybody can make noise, but not everybody can make music. My kids can play the guitar and make it sound beautiful. They grab the guitar, make it sound beautiful. I grab those suckers, man. You pay. I get paid to play music, but I'm sorry, I get paid to stop playing. I guess I could probably get paid to stop playing, not to play.
So, you know, I think I know.
It's about making that connection.
I think I know where you are a really bad quitter. I think I know why. I think you are so comfortable in the growth patterns of your life that quitting is just really something you will be forever really bad at. Like for you, quitting will be like something that it's like you're bad at it because you are so focused and obsessed and attached to the growth. Well, however it comes, it could come with pain, it could come with fear, it could come with like highs and peaks, it could come with it could have any flavor, the good one or the bad one. You are in for that flavor, not the quitting one. It's like that. That's why you're a bad quitter.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I don't like going through the pain. I fight like hell when I'm going through it.
It's
I don't
like
it, but then I have to look back and say, what can I learn? You know, as the saying goes, life is the most difficult teacher of all. It gives you the test first, then it gives you the lesson. But it's not enough to learn the lesson.
No.
You have to find the gift in the lesson. You've got to find the beauty in the pain. You've got to find the mess in the message. You got to make that mess your medicine for you and for someone else. And that happens then by sharing your story.
Right.
By sharing your story with other people, because for many years I was embarrassed. You know, I grew up, you know, the way I did, and it was difficult. And so many people, by the way, have had it so much worse than me. I don't want anyone to think, oh, poor. I don't regret, you know, growing up the way I did. In a way, I wish it was different, but I wouldn't be who I was had I had a different life. So I don't say that in that way to be like, oh, you know, poor me. In the meantime, I know there's a lot of other people that have had it much worse than me. And one of the things that Tony Robbins talks about is if you're going to blame people for the bad and for the pain, you've got to blame them effectively. You've got to blame them for the good too. You got to blame them for the good things. I blame my father for my work ethic. I blame my father for not giving up. Of course, my father never really went after, you know, his dreams or anything, but yet he, you know, he was faced with challenges. He didn't quit. He always kept the roof over our head and food on the table. Right. So, you know, he had a good work ethic. So I you know, I've got to honor him for that.
Yeah. The balance and the hard time.
So there's been more difficult than, we were fortunate that he'd take us back to Portugal every 2 years. So I had, you know, granted, one year we were all excited. We went back to Portugal for 7 weeks. It was going to be this amazing vacation. And I was literally at 12 years old mixing cement Monday through Saturday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that was my job for 6 weeks. So we had about a week and a half vacation after all that was done as they were rebuilding the house. Who knew? But you know what? I've learned a lot. I can, you know, if the zombie apocalypse ever comes, I'm a good guy to have around.
I think, well, you know how I feel about it. I think I'll call you about that. I think, you know, we'll be a really good team with this.
But by the way, I do love that I told my kids that I've got a friend that what she does for a living is kill zombies. I love that. I was actually telling a friend of mine that I was going to have an interview with a zombie killer today. He's like, what? Yeah, that's what she does for a living. She kills zombies. He's like, what? What are you talking about? Dude, she kills zombies. And then when I said you were on The Walking Dead, it was great. It was so good.
You know, what's really funny is that I spend 17 hours a day really living in this apocalypse, and I have zombies all around me. So every time I try to say what I do for a living, I'm like, well, saying an actor in this universe is just kind of not enough. I had to say what I do really. I kill zombies.
You kill zombies. I freaking love it. I love it. I wish
people freak out.
Listen, by the way, that should be on Clubhouse. That should be your first line. I kill zombies.
I kill zombies.
For a
That's
living. I
right.
kill zombies for a living. That should be your tagline. You'll have people like, oh my God, I want her. So no, but going back to what I was saying, because of the way I grew up, because my father made me work with him every single time that he was doing something. I am that guy. Like you kind of want me around in a crisis because I can fix shit.
Yes.
I can build shit. I can do things that
most people don't
yeah,
know.
you'd be surprised. Yeah, you'd be
That's
surprised.
beautiful.
I surprise myself sometimes. So I've got to blame effectively for the things that were good. You had a bad marriage. You hate your husband, you hate your wife, but you've got beautiful, healthy kids. Well, you got to blame them for those beautiful, healthy kids.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's really
understanding
everything. It's like acknowledging everything.
And that's another level of maybe being able to look back. Where all of this started to change for me, though, in fairness. And listen, and I'd be happy to come on another time and have another level of conversation. Where all this really started to change for me was when I started to find forgiveness, because it's about gratitude, and life really is some of the biggest things about life. It's about forgiveness. It's about gratitude and just acceptance, right? True. Among other things, of course. Yet it's about forgiveness, because forgiveness is to be able to look back and to forgive the people that have harmed you. When you can finally forgive, then you can start to see the gifts, because you can't see the gifts if you got so much hate in your heart and hate in your eyes. You can't see the forest for the trees.
It's true.
You hate that person so much, but you don't understand the strength that they gave you.
It's true.
And you're the person you are today because of what you had to go through. That person made you endure, that bully in school, that mean girl, that whatever made you stronger. Because congratulations, you've survived 100% of the worst days of your life.
Made it.
So everything that tried to break you made you. Right. I say it all the time, that everything that taught me how to drown has taught me how to swim.
Right. Wow.
And that's the reality. So if you're alive today, then whatever difficult moments you've been through have put you where you are today. And then you have an opportunity every single day. You have an opportunity to start over. Wow. Every single day you have an opportunity to be a new version of you and forgive and let go and move on.
Yeah. It's true.
So there's so much there. So the forgiveness piece, and I don't know how deep I'm going to go into this, because I know that we want to talk about a few other things.
No, this is great. This is huge, Tony. Right now we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive this pandemic. We have to forgive the fact that somebody fired you. We have to forgive the fact that now you're stuck. I mean, we have to. It's important. It's a huge topic, and I love everything you're touching, because it's exactly what this is about. It's about finding, putting tools out there for people to just grab, and you just never, people might be listening to this while driving, having a really bad day. I'm milking it really hard, and they'll be like, I'm milking this day, just like Tony said. It's like, so being, forgiveness is something that is hard to confront, and it's hard to make a decision to forgive.
So
it's like,
now I'm gonna explain what forgiveness really is, because forgiveness, people think, fuck that, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna forgive that person for doing that, or for saying this, or for saying that. Screw them. Hold on a second. Let's think about that for a second. Say you were bullied when you were a freshman in high school, and you were beaten up and you were bullied. And now, all these years later, you're still suffering that and reliving that, and you're hurting every day because of that. Do you think that person that did that to you ever thought about you again? So what is your hate? What is your anger really doing? The person maybe died. The person is a completely different person. Who knows whatever happened to that person? It doesn't matter. So here's the thing. They say that pain is part of life, and it's true. Pain is part of life. Suffering is a choice. And if you're still suffering that incident of 20 years ago, it's your choice. You are now re-victimizing yourself every time you think of it, every time you bring it up, every time you talk about it. Your life has been impacted, but it's by your action, not theirs. They did wrong, yes. But because you haven't forgiven, because you haven't let go, you're still reliving it. And and it's controlling your life. It's no longer that person's fault. What happened to you was not your fault. The healing, however, is your responsibility.
Wow.
So it's about letting go so that you can grow into who you need to grow into. So you can get up and grow, quite literally. So you can get up and grow through that shit. And until you
Totally.
grow through it, you keep going through it. So here's the thing. The forgiveness is not for the other person. Doesn't matter what happened. You were beaten, you were raped, you were broken, whatever may have happened. It doesn't make it okay. Forgiveness doesn't make it okay. You don't have to go to that person and say, I forgive you. No, you don't have to do that. You could if you choose to, but that's not what it's about. It's about freeing yourself from the prison that you've been living in, that you built the prison yourself out of the boulders of the memories of the shit that happened in your life. And you're in this prison with no wall, with no doors, with no locks, because you're choosing to live there because of the pain of the past. But the person isn't there. You're no longer in danger. You're no longer at a threat. So if you keep blaming that person, you keep re-victimizing yourself. So the idea, by the way, of forgiveness, it is not about forgetting that ever happened. It's not about telling that person it's okay that you did that to me. No, it's not it at all. It's about removing the emotional charge that when you think about that moment and you share that story, you can share from a position of power instead of a position of weakness, so that you don't have to feel the pain and agony of if you tell that story, it just breaks you. And it hurts me so much when somebody's sharing their story of 20 years ago and they just break down and they start to shake. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
And I'm like, I got to help this person. I can't walk away from that because they're suffering that every single time they speak it. And while, even if they're sharing their story, and I have to share this before the show. So remind me, I'm not going to go there now. I tell people to share their story, but if sharing your story causes you that kind of pain, please stop sharing your story until you're ready. I shouldn't say that. You really need to heal that part of you so that you can share the story from a position of power, so that you're not re-victimizing yourself every time you share the story to help someone else. You're re-victimizing yourself again. And that's not worth doing.
I see.
So
thank
now
you for this. This is huge.
Yeah,
and it's a huge difference. Yeah. It's beautiful.
There's so much more to this, Danny. We probably should.
We have to do this again.
Just on this. No, but no, almost just on this, because this is a long process, and there's so much depth here. But I'm just going to give you a surface level.
Forgiving is not forgetting, and we should take that in.
Is not forgetting, but it's about removing that emotional charge, so that when you share that story, when you go back and think of it, I can go back now and think of my childhood and not be afraid, not have that anger towards my father. I can do that. For years I could, and every time I do that, I'm like, I just want to right?
Wow.
And that's not good for me.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, by the way, when our body is sick, our body's supposed to be at ease. And when our body is sick, it's uneasy. It's dis-ease.
Exactly.
It's disease. When we hang on to that anger, we create disease. That stress, when we think about it, creates disease. It makes us sick. It poisons us. There's a saying that says, holding on to anger and hate for somebody, it's like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die.
Wow.
And it's true. Yet I don't even say that one anymore. I got one even better one. Buddha says that holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot coal in your hand, waiting for your enemy to come by so you can throw it at him. But your enemy doesn't come by. So the only one you're hurting is yourself, because it's burning your hand.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop there. I go a little further, because that's even not true, because you're not just hurting yourself. Because if you're in pain right now, you break a toe, I'm set. You break an arm, whatever. And how are you showing up for your cast members? Or you saying, hi, good morning, such a beautiful day. You come home to your son. Hi, son. Yeah, no, I broke my arm today. It was so much fun. No, you're in pain. You're in agony. You're like, don't touch me. Give me a minute. Just leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
But then you get used to that pain. So now you manage it. You're like, yeah, no, everything's good. I'm fine. I'm fine. No, I'm fine. And it becomes an I'm fine. But you're not really fine, because you're holding on to that piece of coal.
Right.
So by holding on to that piece of coal, you're not just hurting yourself. You're hurting those that matter most. You're hurting the people closest to you that you love. You're hurting your family. And even if you're not hurting them, you're definitely not showing up as the best version of yourself. Right? So you're giving that situation, you're giving that those problems of yesterday and last year and 20, 30 years ago, you're giving that your best, and you're giving everyone else the rest of you. So everything's getting the best of you, and those who matter most get the rest of you.
And going to the beginning,
can't show up.
And going to your beginning, telling your mom the only way you can feel our love is by you loving yourself. Otherwise, you cannot feel how much we love you.
And by the way, she can't possibly, because she still hasn't forgiven. She hasn't forgiven my father. She hasn't forgiven herself for not being, even though she was a victim as well, she hasn't forgiven.
Wow.
Right? So talk about holding on to that piece of coal.
Talk about the cycle, right?
I didn't even, you're the first one that's actually connected that back, because it's probably the first time I've told it this way. So my mom is still, I can't say that she's a happy woman, because she lives in that agony of the past, because she's refusing to let go. And I tell her all the time, I said, and I don't want to go into another story, so let me just finish this one.
Yes.
So by letting go, imagine how much lighter you are once you let go. How, if you're showing up and you're undoubtedly, you're really good at life, your family's happy, your coworkers are happy, life is good, but it's still not, imagine how much better it is when you can let go of that shit that you don't think about on a regular basis, but it's in there. It's chewing away at you.
Yeah.
It's there. So when you can forgive that, imagine how much better you'll be, and how much more you can show up, how much brighter you can shine. It's almost like we've all seen that Claritin commercial. There's clear, and then there's Claritin clear, and they pull it back, and you're like, holy cow, look at all those colors.
Yes.
Right?
It's true.
Even as simple as that. So I'm going to say this, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make it okay that somebody hurt you. It's making it okay for you to live, because, and I'll just go through a couple of steps of forgiveness. And I'll go back now, and I'll just share a quick story about my mom. My mom is always praying. She's probably praying right now. And now. And now. She's always praying. God bless her. I need all the prayers I can get. Aside from the fact that I tell her all the time, I'd rather laugh at the sinners than cry with the saints. And she blesses herself and blesses me. Oh my God. But I specifically went to Portugal one time just to have this conversation with her of forgiveness. I flew 3,000 miles to go have this conversation with her and my father about this. Helped a little bit, not a whole heck of a lot, because I'm their son, I'm their little kid, so they don't,
Just till 17.
Yeah, or 7.
Or 7.
So I said, Mom, do you still pray the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven? She does it in Portuguese. She's like, of course, every day, so many times I pray for you, that all the time. I'm like, thank you, Mom. And listen, you really need to stop doing that. What? Says, yeah, you need to stop praying. What do you mean? I said, because you're lying to God. What? And she's like, blew her mind, right?
Wow.
She's like, what are you talking about? I says, well, because you say, as the prayer goes, please forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. But you're lying, because you don't forgive those who trespass against you, but you're asking for forgiveness. So what's it going to be? Are you lying to God, or are you telling God, I don't want to be forgiven, strike me down?
Wow.
So what is it, Mom? And I swear, when I said it to her eyes, she was like, it completely started to rewire the way she was thinking, because she was like,
wow.
Because you think about it, how many times do we say that subconsciously or in our prayer?
Wow.
God, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. So forgive us our sins the way we forgive those who have sinned against us. But if we're not willing to forgive anyone else, what makes you think you're entitled to forgiveness? And your mouth might be saying it, your conscience might be saying it, but your subconscious is saying, bullshit.
Yes.
I don't forgive you. You can't be forgiven because you don't forgive anyone else. Wow. So you've got to be careful the words that you speak and how you live your life intentionally, because sometimes your worst enemy is you, and you sabotage yourself because your words you speak don't really equate, don't represent your thoughts, and you're not in integrity. Now, don't get me wrong, you may be a person of integrity, but you're not in integrity with your words and your actions and how you feel deep down. So stop asking for forgiveness if you're not willing to forgive.
That's
right?
impressive.
So I kind of really racked her brain on that one for a minute, but it's really that important. If you want to be forgiven, you've got to forgive others. And we've all made mistakes. We've all hurt people. I've hurt people.
Of course. Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I've hurt people intentionally. I may have at one point in my life, but not, I've never hurt anyone maliciously. And you know,
Mm.
I know, but I know that I've hurt people. I've said cruel things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And because I was hurt, and is that, you know,
Mhm.
hurt people hurt people. If you don't
Mhm.
heal what cut you, you'll bleed on people that did. If you don't heal what hurts you, you'll bleed on people that didn't cut you. We've all heard
Yes.
those lines, and they're so true,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
sometimes it's the innocent people, like in our cases, me, my brother, my sister, my mom were paying. We were
Mhm.
paying for the sins of somebody that broke my father's balls at work. So he'd come home
Totally.
and take it out on us, right?
Yes. Wow.
So you got to heal the wounds that somebody gave you. Otherwise, you will bleed on those who didn't cut you. So it's about forgiveness. So
I
really
love
quickly,
this.
I'm going to give you a resource. I'm going to give you. So this one's. So the resource I'm going to give everyone is, and I'll give you that after. Is there's 5 steps to forgiveness
Mhm.
that I say. There's 5 steps to forgiveness. There's forgiving the person that hurt you, or the people
Right.
that hurt you. Forgiving
Mhm.
the situation or the situations that were involved. Then next, probably forgiving God or your creator or whoever, because you blame God. Why me? I know I did. Why
Mhm.
did I have to go through this, God?
Mhm.
I didn't want to go to church for a very long time because I'd go to church as a kid and I'd pray, 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 still get home and get my ass kicked.
Mhm.
So what was I praying to? Right. So I
Right.
blame God.
Mhm.
I'm going to skip over step number 4 because step number 4 is really painful.
Mhm.
I'm going to go to step number 5 is you got to forgive yourself.
Oh.
You got to forgive yourself because we blame ourselves.
Mhm.
Why me? What did I do wrong? How could I have been better? What did I do to deserve this? It
Right.
was me, my fault. That happened to her because of me. That happened to him because of me, because of something I didn't do. I should have, could have, would have,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Like my mom, she thinks
Right.
that way.
Yeah.
Step number 4, I'm going to go back. And this is
Yes.
difficult. And this is the most difficult one of all. And by the way, the first time I did this step, it was with someone who was a dear friend of mine that was molested from 7 years old to like 12 years old by her
Oh.
uncles and, you know, and everything. So I understand, and there's somebody in the audience right now that's probably, you know, sticking a needle through a doll right now as
Right.
I'm about to say this, if you know what I mean. Because
Yes.
step number 4 is assuming your responsibility in whatever happened,
Wow.
assuming responsibility, and you're accepting your responsibility in that role. Now I understand if you've been sexually abused, you were molested, you're in a car accident, it was not your fault. I'm not telling you to accept responsibility for that. Just accept the responsibility for the fact that you were alive in
Wow.
that moment in time. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just own it for a second. And maybe you do have to own the whole goddamn thing. Maybe you did
Mhm.
something wrong that caused that to happen. So just
Mhm.
own it. And if it was really bad, just own it for a second. It's not about getting you into pain, but you need to own it in order
Mhm.
to forgive yourself. Because if you forgive
It's
yourself,
true.
but you never really owned it, are you really forgiving yourself?
Yes.
So
It's
people don't
true.
go through that step 4. It's painful. And I'm telling you right now, you're probably going to get messages saying that guy's an ass. I can't believe what he said.
No,
Yet it's
no.
an important part of it
Yeah.
is you've got to accept responsibility for your participation in that situation. Of course, if something happened, you were 3 years old.
The
I
fact that you
know,
were
and
alive, the fact that it was
my
you.
heart bleeds. Yeah, my heart
Yes.
bleeds for you. I mean, listen, I was beaten as a kid, left and right. It wasn't my fault,
Yeah.
so I understand. Yet it's not your fault, but just accept responsibility that your soul was in that body at
Is
that time, in
that,
that moment in time. So own it
yeah.
so that you can forgive it. So those are the 5 steps of forgiveness. And the next resource I'm going to give is there's something called the Ho'oponopono prayer. It's an
Mm.
ancient Hawaiian spiritual prayer. It's not religious, it's spiritual. It's about forgiveness. I don't know if he was a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I think he was a psychologist that was also studying to be a shaman
Oh.
in 1970 something. And he was studying this thing called the Ho'oponopono. It's Ho apostrophe Oponopono,
Okay.
Opono, just the
Okay.
way it sounds.
Mm.
Ho'oponopono. Um, and he was studying this, and this is a forgiveness ritual. And there was the most violent prison in the United States was in Hawaii. There was sections of the prisons that the guards wouldn't even go to. There were murders every day. It was just the most violent prison in the United States. So he came along, and for 4 or 6 months, he just didn't. He didn't go visit. He didn't go visit the wards. He would just stay in the office. He'd look at their picture. He'd look at their name, And then obviously this is a process, by the way. I'm going to give you the short version. There's a process that what I'm saying, including the 5 steps. There's a process that I do with people that are, so it's a process, but basically he would look at their picture and he'd say, I'm sorry. I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. And repeat that mantra over and over again, 4 or 5 times for each person. And within 4 or 6 months, the crime dropped 70% by itself without doing anything else.
Wow.
Now, I'm not going to do this now with you or with your audience. I'm happy to do this with you, by the way, offline. And the way I would do is you close your eyes. I'd put you in a happy place and do some good, powerful, emotional stacking, gratitude and everything else, and get into your heart. And then I'd have you bring in people that have hurt you and imagine them in front of you, see them and just go through that process. It's a very powerful process. I'd encourage everyone to check out Ho'oponopono.
I will. Thank you. Thank you for this. This is huge. I mean, you don't have to do it, but at least, guiding people toward places that they can really find those exercises. That's huge, especially now.
Yeah. And just remember, and I'll just wrap up with this and just say, remember that, life is easier when you're not holding on to the shit from yesterday. And you can't grab the future with both hands if you're still trying to hang on to the past. You can't, if you're trying to ride a bull by the horns and you grab the bull by the horns with 2 hands, you're going to get knocked off if one of them's holding the tail. You got to hang on with both hands, let go of that shit in the past. There's a reason that, for example, you need to focus on what's in front of you. There's a reason that the windshield is 6 feet across and the rear view mirror is only this big. You're not supposed to focus on the past, focus on the future, and just leave it all behind and forgive, because forgiveness is such a huge component of this. And then, of course, there's gratitude and just being grateful for not only what you had yesterday, what you have today, but be grateful for what's coming tomorrow, because the best, my friends, is yet to come.
It is yet to come. Tony, thank you so much for being here. Collecting and growing seeds with you have been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, and everything you dropped here is absolute golden. Thank you for your time. It's been just epic, really.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. You're amazing. You're officially the first zombie killer I could now call a friend. I didn't know any zombie killers till today. And now you know that if there's a zombie apocalypse, I'm not a bad guy to have around.
No, yeah, I'll be knocking. I know you're going to have a bunch of all kinds of stuff to be around. It's so great. Let's hope that we don't head to the apocalypse. Trust me, it's insane.
Right? I mean, it felt apocalyptic already last year, right?
Yeah, totally. Crazy. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right, great.
Bye.